What's up, YouTube? You might notice that the picture is a little crisper today, but I'm still playing with the new webcam, so bear with me. But today's video is brought to you by my Paralegal Boss Club group in Facebook, where I have a client and member ask, my boss asked me to come up with an action plan to tackle subrogation for a client covered by Medicare. Sticky situation. Although our firm has a few templates for Medicare subrogation, we do not have any sort of checklist. Big issue for a lot of people. There's a lot to cover with subrogation, so having a checklist is awesome to have on hand. What tasks should my action plan checklist include? Thanks for your help. Awesome question, Jeremy, and you have inspired today's video. So I want to take this one step further and not only deal with the Medicare issues, but subrogation from healthcare insurance companies, workers' comp, ERISA plans in general. And let me tell you, if you are a freelance paralegal or an aspiring freelance paralegal, then you're not going to want to miss out on this video, because I polled several law firms and attorneys on this very issue, and I found that it is one of the #1 items that attorneys and law firms outsource. They don't want to deal with Medicare or subrogation issues either. They'd rather you deal with them. So if you're a paralegal dealing with subrogation issues, or you're a freelancer paralegal wanting to deal with this, and add it as a client service for your virtual services, remote paralegal services, then stay tuned, keep watching, because I've got so much stuff packed in this video today. Lots of templates and descriptions that I will link below. So keep watching. As a paralegal, it is my job to identify any potential lien holders for potential recovery in a lawsuit from an injury, illness, or harm. If Medicare or your health insurance company paid for your ambulance ride, hospital stay, or anything dealing with the care for which you are seeking recovery in a lawsuit, then quite simply, they're entitled to recover from it as well. So here are the steps that I take to ensure I am checking all of those boxes and making sure that I do what I need to do to find any subrogation liens, to negotiate them, and to finalize them. So here we go. The first item in your subrogation checklist is to get a handle on it. Regardless how your case settles, or you get a jury verdict or award, or if it's through arbitration, you really need to get a handle on what liens lie ahead of you. So what you need to do is compile a list and create an index of all of that information. You need the contact information for the lien holder, you need the policy identifiers, you need the amount that you think that they're going to take, and any sort of notes. Now, your list is going to be general at first, and of course, I've got one for you on my website. You can download it at arrowconsultants.solutions, and of course, I will link it in the description below. We're going to expand on the index, but for now, all you need to gather is that contact information and the policy information. And then, once you've got it all together, we will start step 2. Step 2 in the process is to have a meeting or discussion with your client about the potential recovery process for the lien holders. They need to be made aware that their settlement or verdict is going to be diminished by the fact that they owe liens. They owe an amount to an insurance company of some kind. Now, you don't want them to be blindsided by any communications from insurance companies or Medicare, because when you send a letter of representation to Medicare and they respond to you, any letter that they send to you, they're also going to send to the client as well. So don't blindside your client, have a discussion with them. And speaking of letters of representation, that takes me to step 3, which is to prepare your letters of representation. Okay guys, I had to change locations because my dogs and my family and my husband, who's working out in the garage right now, are driving me insane. So let's get back to it. When it comes to preparing your letters of representation, you need to include everything that the insurance is going to need in order to identify the beneficiary and get that information to you in a timely manner. So you need to include their name, the date of birth, their address, their social security number, their HICN number, which is their Medicare number, their date of death, if that's applicable, and anything else you're going to need. Now, when you're reporting the case to Medicare, there's a couple more things that they need. They need to know the gender, believe it or not. They need to know what type of injury it was, whether or not it was workers' compensation. And they will just need some more information about the harm that was incurred before they can release information to you about that potential claim. When sending off that information to Medicare, be sure that you include all of the letters of office or powers of attorney if anybody other than a beneficiary is signing your HIPAA authorization. Now, keep in mind, when it comes to Medicare, there are multiple parts that you have to deal with, but there are 4 major parts that most personal injury type cases involve, which is Medicare Parts A and B, which covers in-hospitalization and outpatient hospitalization, Medicare Part C, which is usually known as the Medicare Advantage Plan, and Medicare Part D, which is the prescription drug coverage. Honestly, when it comes to Medicare, I could dedicate an entire video to it because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Medicare. But instead of doing that and covering it all, I will put in the description box below a link to the Medicare recovery process. Of course, what would this video be without some additional resources for you? And for that reason, I have prepared a template letter of representation, which I will make available on my website, arrowconsultants.solutions. I will go ahead and put a link in the description box below. But regardless, I truly recommend that you send those letters of representation along with any other supporting documents, your power of attorney, your HIPAA, your letters of office, anything else that you need. Be sure to send those certified mail return receipt requested. You really want to be able to track those letters and make sure they are received by the proper people.
Now that we have steps 1, 2, and 3 taken care of, it's time to move on to step 4, which is wait for feedback.
You should start receiving responses from insurance companies within about 45 days. With Medicare in particular, you're going to receive 3 different letters from them. The first you're going to get within about 30 to 35 days. That's a form to fill out. The second one is the payer's rights and responsibilities letter. The third one is the conditional payment notice, also known as the CPN. It usually takes about 90 days or so to get that CPN, so keep that in mind. That's another reason why we need to do it as early as possible. Keep in mind that insurance companies may not provide you with a summary of detailed itemizations right away. They may want some more information about the claim before they release it to you. Regardless, if you don't have that information within about 90 days, then it's time to start being proactive and calling people and asking them why you haven't received it. Let them know that you're involved in the case and you need the conditional payment amount. Once you have Medicare's conditional payment notice, also the CPN, then you can go online and register for their portal, which will make obtaining their amounts much easier. Now, going back to step 2, which is having a discussion with your client and all of those forms that Medicare sends out in response to your letter of representation, keep in mind that all 3 of those letters that they send out also go to your client. So I wouldn't be surprised if you receive a letter or a telephone call from your client or an email saying, "What do? I got this in the mail." This is why we have a discussion with them early on. That takes me to the next part, which is keep in mind that now that you've reported this potential recovery or right to recovery to these insurance companies and to Medicare, they get to bug you, and they will. They're going to bug you about every 30 to 60 to 90 days. All of those insurance companies are going to want updates on where their potential right to recovery lies. That is actually different for Medicare. Medicare won't ask that you update them. Instead, Medicare will continuously update you with those CPNs. Now, they're not going to always send those out right away, so that's why you have to register for that portal, go online, download a screenshot of what the amount is. I do that monthly and save it in your case file. Of course, you want to add that information to your index as well. Now that you've got the conditional payment amounts from the insurance companies and Medicare, it's time for step 5. And step 5 is to audit and dispute. Now is the time to expand on that index and include columns for amount billed, amount owed, and anything else you may need. Because as you get that information in from insurance companies, you're going to add that to your index. Now you need to audit those itemizations that they sent you and make sure that everything is related to the illness, injury, or harm for which you are seeking recovery. Take it from me, Medicare will attempt to stick their grubby little fingers into anything that they possibly can, which is why auditing is super important. If you see that your amount has dramatically spiked, then that's a visual cue to you from your liens index to check into it. All you're getting from Medicare is a screenshot saying what you owe. They only send out those conditional payment notices, including the itemizations for each line item that beneficiary owes whenever you request it. They're not always going to send it. So if you see that amount spike, that's a visual cue for you to go ahead and order a new conditional payment notice so you can figure out what it is that's been applied. If it doesn't relate to your injury, go ahead and dispute it now. Speaking of disputes vary depending on which insurance company you're dealing with and whether or not that's Medicare. If it's Medicare, you can enter those disputes through the client portal. If it's a healthcare insurance company, you may run into some issues, especially if it's an ERISA plan. Honestly, the law is on the side of an ERISA plan, but don't give up. Try disputing it. When it comes to Medicaid, if you've got Medicaid as a potential lien holder, they actually waive a lot. So all you need to do is ask. But when it comes time for those disputes, be ready for your proof. You're going to need support documentation to prove that that line item doesn't belong on the potential recovery for that lien holder. Now we move on to step 6, and that is to negotiate and finalize. By now, a few months could have passed or a few years. But now is the time to start negotiating those liens down. Depending on the type of recovery you have is where those liens could go. If your client has a right to recovery in a large amount, then I wouldn't expect the lien holders to budge much, especially an ERISA plan. They hardly budge at all, to be honest with you. But when it comes to Medicaid, they are known for waiving their demand entirely. And if you've got CMS as a right to recovery, which is Medicare, as well as the Medicare Advantage plan, but CMS has the bulk of the lien, then the Medicare Advantage plan could waive their right to recovery altogether. But it's really up to you to ask that in order to negotiate it down. Now, as you negotiate those amounts down, be sure to add those to your index because that was the whole point. You wanted to track it all. When it comes to Medicare, after they take into consideration the attorney's fees and expenses, they'll apply a little calculation and the amount will actually go down from what was given to you on the CPN. Great thing, right? So now comes the hard part, and that is you have to pay Medicare within 60 days. So when you get that final demand, be sure to diary 60 days from the date they issued the letter. If your demand cannot be paid within those 60 days, then your beneficiary and your case is going to owe additional principal and interest, which I will cover in the next step. But regardless, be sure to diary that 60-day deadline as soon as you get that final demand. Which brings me to the next step, and that is step 7, payout. We've finally gotten to payout. You've got a signed settlement release. You've requested the settlement funds. They've come in, they've passed through your client trust account, and now it's time to pay out to everybody that needs to be paid out, including the lien holders, the insurance companies, Medicare. So you've got the final demand, you've diaried the 60 days, and it's time to pay it within those 60 days. Prepare the letters to the insurance companies, enclose the final demand, the check, and get it all sent out for the payout, and be sure to send it by certified mail return receipt requested for tracking purposes again. When it comes to Medicare, if there is not enough money to go around, then you can apply for a hardship waiver with Medicare. Keep in mind, your final demand still exists. You still have to pay that final demand. If you need to file a hardship waiver, I would certainly do so right away to make sure the 60 days doesn't lapse. If it does, then there's a potential that you will owe more. And if there is enough money to go around, but you couldn't meet the 60-day deadline, then add a little something additional to your letter that you're sending out to Medicare, along with a copy of the final demand and the payment. What you need to do is put together proof of why you couldn't pay that settlement demand within the next 60 days from the date that they issued that letter. And what you need to do is show them the date on the settlement funds check, so you had to wait for it to pass through your client trust account, or show them the date of the order, the date that a judge approved distribution of settlement funds. For instance, if it was a wrongful death case, then you have to wait for that order of distribution. Medicare will work with you, but they need to understand the circumstances of why you paid it late. Now, all you have to do is wait for those certified green cards to come back, and by that time, you should be pretty ready to close your file. File away those certified green cards, scan them, throw them away, whatever it is that you need to do, and close your matter. Jeremy, thank you so much for submitting your question to my Facebook paralegal group. And I hope talking with you about the subrogation process helped you in some way, shape, or form. And for those of you listening, I hope this video helped you as well. And if I haven't supplied enough templates and information already, I've got one more for you, the most important template of this entire video, which is my subrogation checklist. So here's how the subrogation checklist works. Just enter in your case name and the beneficiary or insured's name. Keep track of where you are step by step and keep a snapshot of all of your cases in one form. Just a little something to keep you ahead of the game and organized. If you would like a copy of my step-by-step process for the subrogation checklist, then be sure to head over to arrowconsultants.solutions, join as a member, and you will receive a free copy of that checklist. Of course, I would love it if you would follow me on social media and join the Facebook group where we talk about all sorts of information. Your comment and question could be featured on my next video. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Your support means the world to me. As always, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, a fantastic rest of your work week, and an amazing weekend ahead of you. I will see you guys all next week. Bye!